Detroit Lions fans, this is Detroit Den 313. We're back with another one. Excited for this one today. I think we got two electric players that we're going to hit on. But before we get going, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel out tremendously. We're going to keep talking about it, so you guys keep doing it and you guys keep winning free SHIT, right? I won't drop the word yet. We'll see if I get passionate and start cussing later, but I won't start this early. But Steve dropped it a couple of days ago. If you haven't seen it yet, when we get to that 100 member mark, we're going to drop some hot stuff for you. It'll be a giveaway just for the members, just a members only show. A lot of people have been requesting that. They say, hey man, we're investing in you guys. Can we get a little something just for ourselves? We're going to make that happen for you. And 15,000, we're going to do our typical subscriber giveaway type stuff. Maybe some of them new jerseys, some new numbers. We'll get a little bit of that new drip for you. But that stuff out of the way. Steve, what the heck are we talking about today?
Your bread and butter, Will. Your wheelhouse. I think this is your specialty. I think when we're talking DBs, sometimes I'll just have to sit back, just listen to the knowledge of Will Ford. I think this is where you really have a good eye for some prospects. We've had some names. The Detroit Lions have their top 30 list. I think they're keeping it close to the vest. It's a big secret lately. I know that the top 30 visits ended on the 6th. And now we're starting to get into those local pro days. So some names that have been being linked to these top 30 visits are some interesting names, some very interesting names. Some guys we've talked about. One guy that's been talked about at the NFL Combine, but not really mentioned by the Detroit Lions, but did have an official visit. So we'll start with some defensive backs today. And Jonas Sanker from the University of Virginia, official visit. Here's his RAS card. Will, this is your guy. This is someone that you've kind of brought to light. For me, especially, maybe some other Detroit Lions fans. I wouldn't call him a household name, but might want to start paying attention because he's getting a visit. He's got some good film. He's got some good athleticism, safety, Will's wheelhouse. This is going to be a Will Ford episode. We're just going to sit back and enjoy the world that we live in, and just he's going to grace us with his presence and knowledge today. So, Mr. Ford. Jonas Sanker, someone that you brought to us very recently, I think about a week ago. You were talking about how he'd be a great fit for the Detroit Lions. Now I think he's on the Detroit Lions radar. It tells me that Brad Holmes, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, you had better get hot onto it because you're clearly watching this show. You're clearly listening to what Mickey's saying here. So, Will, how do you still feel about Jonas Sanker? Are you more in love? Are you the same? Thoughts? How do you feel?
Jonas Sanker to me is a guy that you just pull the trigger on and say, he's a guy that's going to help my football team out. Now, he's not a boom guy. So if you're looking to go boom or bust, that's not the guy you go boom or bust with. He's the guy that you say, hey, listen, I need a sure thing, because he's going to be exactly what he's been. He's going to be exactly what his nickname has been deemed. If you don't know, his nickname is Mr. Reliable. This is a guy who has a high floor, right? But in the same token, the ceiling isn't that much higher than the floor. So if you want to get a solid football player on your team, you draft him and you're going to get what you expect out of him. If you're looking for somebody where you want to say, hey, man, listen, I know, I know that there's a risk to taking this guy, but I also could be drafting a potential Hall of Famer. Mr. Sanker isn't your dude. But when I look at Jonas Sanker and I look at our safety room in general, it is dire in that safety room. Like it is, we have next to nothing outside of the big dogs. And granted, we do have arguably two of the best safeties in the league. But after that, that room's empty. So I do think that we're going to address the safety room at some point, whether it's moving some guys around, drafting some guys that can play nickel, play just all over the secondary, or if we just go out and get a true blue safety. I think that's more of what Jonas Sanker is. He's that strong safety. He's that guy that can play down into the box. He's a guy that you can play a little bit at nickel, but I do think there's some guys who can cover a little bit better man-to-man, but he'd be able to get the job done. Immediately going to make an impact on special teams. Physical guy. He's down to tackle, man. He's down to lay the wood. Love that about him. Smart dude. Plays the game at a high level. Student of the game. Jonas Sanker, man, to me, like I said, he's a guy that you just draft on your team, man, where you don't want to worry about. You don't want to say, hey, Brad, I want to do what I've been doing and draft guys that are, man, just crazy overachieving. That's not what I get out of Sanker. I get just a solid choice. So, Steve, you got a chance to do a little bit more digging on him. Is there anything you feel like I missed? Do you feel the same way about him? How you feel about Mr. Sanker?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be transparent. When we're talking prospects, I think I have a weakness, and my weakness is probably your strength. That's why we're the best Detroit Lions podcast out there, because we just, kind of work hand in hand with that. But when you struggle or when you're not as crisp on something, what do you got to do? Well, you got to practice it. You got to do some more homework. You got to do some more studying. So I knew this episode was coming. It's hard for me to really talk about DBs. So today, and I'm going to give a shout out to a YouTube channel, the DB Network. All right. This guy does a lot of great film breakdowns on defensive backs. He's a former defensive one back himself from the University of Hawaii. Coach Mark Patterson also played in the NFL. I found his YouTube channel a couple of days ago, and he does a lot of DB stuff on there. So check that out. And he did a full episode, a full breakdown on Jonas Sanker, and I was watching that last night. And then happened to be, hey, we're talking about him today. This is perfect. I'm ready to go. I'm gassed up and ready. Man, I think his video and what you talk about puts Sanker higher on my list, because I don't think he's overly elite at anything. I think he's just good at a lot of different things. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, like you said. I think he's just a guy who could probably have a nice 10-year career, 8 to 10-year career, and just ride off into the sunset, make your money, live happily ever after with your family. That's what the Detroit Lions need. I think he'd be a perfect fit in the middle rounds. This guy on his YouTube channel, Coach, was talking about, how he just has great recognition, how he's just, he's watching the wide receiver shoulders and where they're angling, and he's just beating them to the point of contact, and a lot of terminology. I'm just like, I should be writing this down, but I didn't. Just took some mental notes. So I think he'd be a great fit round 3, 4, and I think that's about where you had him in your mock draft, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a perfect fit. And the defensive backs room, loaded. But when we start looking at safeties, pretty thin. Just kind of Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch. What happens if one of those guys gets injured, or Brian Branch flips off the double birds again? Maybe he gets a suspension. What are we going to do? What are we going to be looking at? So I think we do need some depth there. I think Sanker would be a perfect fit somewhere in those middle rounds to just kind of come in and help our defense. And saw some special teams plays he was doing too as a gunner. Like those punt returners back there better learn how to call a fair catch, because he will hit you in those. And I know you're kind of vulnerable on punt return, but he made some good special teams plays. I think at the very least, if the Detroit Lions drafted him, that's the role he'd be in. And it might not be a sexy one. I know during Lions games, that's when, usually everyone's getting up to go grab a beer during punt and kickoff and most special teams plays that aren't field goals. But, those are part of the games that, they do matter. And Brad and Dan have addressed special teams, and they want to win that aspect of the game too. So Sanker, I think perfect fit. Round 3, maybe round 4, if he's there, get to the podium, get some safety help.
Yeah, he's definitely a pick that I wouldn't be upset about at all, man. But there are some guys out there, Steve, that I'm crazy excited for. So Jonas Sanker, man, I'd just be like, good freaking pick. But there's some other guys that we may not talk about them today, but we're going to talk about them in the near future that I would be like, in love with. So let us know how you're feeling on them. We talked about them one other time. I think some more people that are in our channel's audience, man, have probably got an opportunity to do some more digging on them. So let us know how you're feeling on him.
Yeah. For me, it would be all board dependent. Who's there? But regardless, if we're talking round 3 or 4, like he's probably already on my top 5 for those rounds and those values. So I would be more than okay with it, but it would really just depend like who's available. So there's no way we're going to have that information until draft night, but I think he'd be an absolute steal.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously elephant in the room, you get this guy on your team, he pans out, he's solid. Is this a guy that you're looking to potentially replace one of your safeties? Maybe one of these guys that's coming up on a $90 million contract, or is this a guy that you're probably going to continue to be a reserve for some seasons? Because you talked about that 10-year career. If he's going to play 10 years for the Detroit Lions, he's going to be a backup for 10 years, or what we doing? What we doing, Mr. Sanker?
Who's the $90 million man?
That's going to be Kirby Joseph.
Oh, Kirby Joseph's getting $90 million over how many years? How many years am I giving Kirby Joseph?
It's got to be. I mean, bottom line for me is this: Antoine Winfield got, I think, $22 million or $21 million over 4 seasons. I think he was right around that $84-85 million. So Kirby Joseph's got to start the conversation with what, 21 or 22 million, right? So I mean, it's got to be close to around that 90 million, 85, $86 million over 4 seasons. So yeah, that's really what it boils down to. We paying Kirby that money. Or you get Mr. Sanker in here. We looking at our secondary looking like Brian Branch and Jonas Sanker back there.
I don't know. I think that's a good move that Brad Holmes could take. He could say, hey, right now I'm not sure if I want to give Kirby that $22 million. Maybe I bring in Sanker and I get a year or two to look at him and see what I got and then make a decision. And it could get interesting. Listen, there's some truth to behind what Amon-Ra St. Brown said on his podcast. There's just a little truth to it. Like safety is an easy position, especially for the Detroit Lions when fully healthy and we have a solid front seven. Those guys in the back end, their jobs are a little bit easier when they're just kind of standing around and watching quarterbacks get sacked. So I don't know, man. At the very least, I think Sanker would at least give him that insurance, like we talked about with J-Mo. Do we want to pay J-Mo $22 to $25 million, or do we want to draft a player like Isaiah Bond and say, hey, maybe I see how this kid pans out before I start handing out checks? So I would say it's the same boat with Kirby and Sanker, if that's the world we're going to be living in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, politicians answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to let you off the hook with that answer, that little politician's answer. But I will say this. We give the safety position a little bit of light razzing, and we talk about how easy it is. But guys like Kirby Joseph are special. He's a receiver back there. He's covering a whole lot of ground back there playing center field. And I definitely know Jonas Sanker cannot play center field the way that Kirby Joseph can. Now, can Brian Branch? That's a different conversation, a different story. So I think that Brian Branch can do everything that you need a young man to do in the secondary. So maybe you're looking at a situation where you start to play some different games with Brian Branch and you let Mr. Sanker come in and be kind of that strong safety, that physical guy that plays a little bit more in the box. So even though I love Brian Branch doing that, but at the end of the day, the NFL does stand for not for long. Not trying to get rid of Kirby Joseph. I want Kirby Joseph to get paid. So before, a lot of times we have these conversations and I say certain things and you guys are thinking that I'm saying I don't want certain things. I'll say it again. Kirby Joseph is one of the guys on this team that I want to get paid because I do feel like he is special. He's special. So Mr. Sanker is not a guy that I believe is special, but I believe he's solid. So for me, he wouldn't be a guy that would be coming in to replace Kirby Joseph. He'd be a guy to be coming in as a depth piece, an instant special teamer, and a guy maybe that you could start dancing around with playing the nickel position. You know what I mean? If ever needed. If we get into a situation like last year, we get a lot of secondary guys banged up. Maybe that's a spot that he could kind of grow into. I don't like him in the man-to-man coverage, but hey, if we're dealing with teams that are coming to town, like with the George Kittles of the world and stuff like that, I think he wouldn't have a problem, doing that type of stuff. But if you got a Jordan Addison in the slot, I wouldn't want him getting caught up with a guy like that. So he does interest me. There's some guys that I do have ahead of him, but darn good football player.
Ahead of him in round 4? Like, yeah, I mean, I know what you're going to say. It'd be board dependent, but if he's there, and depending on what we do in the first 3 rounds, I think he's one of those guys that could just be an absolute steal.
I'm not going to say necessarily. I'm not going to say round 4. I'll say this. There's guys right around his same range that I have a little bit ahead of him.
Who you got? Who's on your mind? Spill the beans.
I'm not going to spill it because we're going to end up doing shows about it. So I'm going to keep it close to the vest. But
no secrets among friends here. Is that what we're doing? Detroit Den 313. I thought we were very transparent, and there's no secret from you and me or our subscribers. And you just holding on to this one to the grave.
Yeah, not to the grave, but I'm gonna hold on to it maybe till tomorrow or later on this week.
All right, I know your weakness. I'll get you to tell me off air. But moving on.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday we had a conversation about, what if Brad Holmes just does something that nobody really sees coming? And I asked you a question. What do you think would be a position that would shock you in round 1 that he took and you thought would razz up the fans the most? And you said wide receiver. And I was with you, and I was starting to think like, well, I never got a chance to answer that, because I do think receiver is one of those positions, because everyone on Twitter, in the podcast world, ourselves included, we're into this list, lumped into this category of pass rush in first round. So I started thinking today. I saw a name pop up on the top 30 list, Kentucky's Maxwell Hairston, who, like I said earlier, became a household name at the combine. If you don't know why, there's a number down there next to his 40-yard dash, 4.28. That is fast, Will. That is really, really fast. And his RAS card's impressive, 9.63, height of 5'11", 180. We'll call it 185. I'll round up a little bit for him. 10-yard split, 20-yard split, all looks good. This kid tested off the charts. So we haven't even talked about him because I think we're on the same page. So before we get into Maxwell Hairston and his style of play, do you think a corner is a fit for the Detroit Lions in round one? Because Maxwell's not falling to pick 60. Maybe he falls to early round 2, but he ain't making it to 60. Do you think corner is a fit for the Lions in the first part of the draft?
I think impact player is a fit for the Detroit Lions in the first round of the draft. And if you listen to the breadcrumbs that Brad's dropping, he's putting himself in a position to be able to draft whoever he feels like is going to be that impact player for the Detroit Lions. There's some things that I feel they're controversial.
Sure.
I don't even really, I was about to say, I don't even really know if I want to go down this road. It's just, man, I will say this. The defending things that I say that I know that are they're at a football competent level sometimes. It gets frustrating. I will be transparent and say that. Now,
well, I'm going to give you a handful of sand. I want you to stand on it and take your flag and mark it as Will Island. What do you think?
I don't mind that at all, man. It's just a matter of I want to have banter. I want to have conversation. Sometimes when it's just like, man, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just like, okay, why is it done? Let's talk about it. So one thing that I will say is this. Our secondary, we beefed up the secondary. We have a lot of corners. I think it was we beefed it up to 7 or 8 corners or whatever. But there's some guys that have position versatility. So while I can sit here and tell you that our safety room is pretty bare, I can also say, listen, Avonte Maddox is a guy who can play safety, right? So that gives you another safety. Terrion Arnold is a guy who can play safety. That gives you another safety. Or he can play nickel down into the box. And I think sometimes when you don't watch a whole lot of film, man, you don't understand that where these guys are playing. Like, football isn't just, hey, you got a free safety, a strong safety, 2 corners, a nickel. Man, there was times where Terrion Arnold was playing in the box with Coach Glenn. But I feel like we get boxed into these thought processes of old school football and positions when Brad is saying he drafts secondary players that play secondary.
Can I inject real quick?
Yes, sir.
I think a lot of people might not know this, but Terrion Arnold played safety at Alabama as a freshman, and Nick Saban moved him to corner. So versatility, continue, Will.
Yeah, it's things that, but those are the types of things that I got to get on and defend. And it just gets frustrating sometimes. It's not that I won't do it and whatever, but it's just, those are things that are non-debatable. Like, we shouldn't have to debate things that literally have came out of Brad Holmes and Terrion Arnold's mouth. He said, I can play anywhere in the secondary that the Detroit Lions need me. They need me to play safety, I could play it. Need me to play nickel, I could play it. Need me to play outside, I could play it. So that's the bottom line. We have a positionless secondary. So when I'm talking about even guys that I may like a little bit more than a guy like Jonas Sanker, it's because I know Brad likes those type of guys too. So there's some safeties that I can also play nickel. So I already know that that's a guy who Brad is going to love, right? Rather than a guy that has to play strong safety, or he's probably not going to be on the field, and he has some drawbacks really if you put him into the box playing that nickel position. So when we're talking about these guys, getting back to my man Harrison, right? First things first, Michigan guy, right? Michigan guy, West Bloomfield guy. Part of that is the local pro days. If you're a person that's from Michigan, you're allowed to come to the local pro days. I think that may be a strong part of the reason why he's getting some time with the Detroit Lions. Not going to say the only reason. Dude can play football, but he doesn't fit the mold of the typical guy that the Detroit Lions draft in a secondary. Normally we get guys who are physical in our secondary. We want guys that can come up and tackle, come up and play inside of the box. They can support the run game. They can play in the screen game. They're not going to just easily get blocked by big body receivers. Maxwell's going to get banged around and blocked a little bit. He's not the most physical guy. He's not a guy that you're going to be depending on to make open field tackles, right? He's a guy that you're going to be putting out there to cover. What he is that ball goes up in the air, Steve, and he's beat. Next thing you know, when the ball arrives, he's no longer B. That catch up speed is crazy. And it's scary because you have these special guys like Jay Jetta and Jamar Chase, and you got these guys, man, that I don't know if it's going to be as easy to catch these guys in the NFL as it was in some of these college games where he got caught out of position and he just ran guys down. But I'll tell you, he's going to run most guys down. So that's a thing that worries me. But when I look at his 40-yard dash time and the 4.2 is special, the makeup speed is special, I think some of the reason why he gets out of position sometimes is he understands how fast he is and he can take a little bit more risks than most guys. But his 10-yard split, I believe, was,
I got it right here. 153.
So 153 10-yard split, but Jonas Sankers was 151. So, and you can see it too. The burst, man. The burst.
This says 157.
I got it from the combine earlier, and it's 151 from the combine from the combine that I had earlier. But either way, here's what I'm gonna say: the burst isn't that much different. It's not that crazy in the 10-yard. It's not. When I watch him and he's breaking on footballs, I don't see that instinctual attacking. Last year, my man that I was pounding a table for, Nate Wiggins, when he broke on a football, it looked different. I don't see that special, aggressive, attacking, making plays on a football from Maxwell. That's just that. When you look at it, it jumps off the screen at you. Now, the makeup speed, like I said, that's something that jumps off the screen. So when I'm thinking about the Detroit Lions, I'm thinking about it from a standpoint for Brad to step outside of what Brad does. It would have to be something that's crazy special. And I just don't see that. So I like his game. Somebody's going to draft him. They're going to get a darn good football player, somebody that plays a little bit different style than the Detroit Lions, I believe. I don't see him as a guy that's going to end up a Detroit Lion for those reasons. He's not going to be physical. He's not going to tackle. He's going to get blocked in the screen game. I don't see him in cold weather in Chicago, freezing his butt off, going to win us NFC North football game, man. So for those reasons, I'm out on him with the Detroit Lions. But as a Michigan man from West Bloomfield, I'm cheering for him. So how you feeling about him? You think I'm close? What you thinking?
Here, I'm gonna put this up again. So when I was looking at this and I saw that he had a top 30 visit, start doing some research, start looking into him. I saw his frame, 5'11", 180. I looked at that 40-yard dash, and I thought, and my first instinct was, okay, can he play football? Like, yeah, he can work out. He can run fast. He's got a nice build. Can he play football? So I took the day. I took a couple hours, put on some Kentucky Wildcats film, and I see a guy that plays outside corner and in the SEC, and he had some nice games. He had some really nice games against some good competition. I watched the Kentucky Wildcats versus the Texas Longhorns, who have two receivers in this draft that run like deer and are going to be two. They got two guys, Isaiah Bond and what's the other kid's name from Texas? They're going to be top 60 picks. Matthew Golden. They're going to get drafted, and I think he more than held his own against them. And he also had 2 fumbles on running plays in there. So I don't think he's coming in and laying the wood and absolutely making you feel his presence when he hits you, but he'll go in there and he'll try to at least knock the football loose and create some turnovers. And that's what I like to see, because I kind of think Kirby Joseph does the same thing, and Amik Robertson does the same thing. You catch the football, I'm going to try to punch it out. Might not be the biggest guy. Don't need to. I'm not trying to hit you and take you out of the game completely. I'm trying to get my team the football. I don't know. And again, this goes back to what I said. I don't know that corner is anything that really makes sense with how deep we are at that position right now. But maybe Brad Holmes is thinking outside the box. What does he see? Because like I said, he had a top 30 visit. That could have been last week. Now these pro days or these local pro days are kicking off this week. So Brad could be double dipping, and we might not even know it. He could have brought him in last week for his top 30. Now bringing him in again and getting an extra look at him, maybe some one-on-one time. So I don't know. Maybe he's a kid that should be on our radar, but positionally, I don't love it in round 1. And I do think Maxwell will get drafted in round 1. But again, we didn't think Terrion Arnold would end up at Detroit Land. I don't think we talked about him a whole lot last year. We were talking about a lot of guys, and we were thinking, Terrion Arnold, like, he's going to be a top 15 pick. Why are we even going to bother looking at this guy? But if Brad's seeing something and he thinks that maybe if Maxwell falls to 20, 21, does he make another phone call to another team and do something that kind of surprises us? Because I was a little surprised last year. So I'm with you. I think when I look at Maxwell, I think press cover guy, that's an Aaron Glenn defense. Is that what Kelvin Shepherd's going to be running? Does that fit the Detroit Lions? I don't know. I don't know that he's a perfect fit, but I think he's a great cover corner. I don't think he's a great tackler or a thumper, but I don't know, Will. I'm interested, and he plays better football than what I thought. So like I said, when I was just looking at his measurables, I had to go look and ask myself, can he play football? I think he definitely can. I don't think he'd get an SEC scholarship and be a first-round talent if he couldn't. So he could play football. Is he perfect? No. But again, if we draft him at pick 28, what are we going to do with him? Sit him for a year or two? Because who's he going to play over? Would he be competing for some nickel time, which I didn't see a lot on his film, so I don't know if he can do it. I'm not saying he can't, but I don't know where he would fit at on our team. But his measurables and his film do excite me. I just don't know that he's a fit.
I will say, in the defense of Terrion Arnold last year, we were having some heated debates about whether or not he was going to be better than Kool-Aid McKinstry. And there was a lot of people that were all about Kool-Aid McKinstry or whatever. But I had to stand on, because you had me thinking I was crazy for a second. Let me know we're in here. We good?
Yeah, it's loading. Yeah. Oh, hey, it's Jalen Hurts.
But yeah, so Mr. Sinker, because this is something that jumps out at me on film, that 4.51. He's instinctual and he's twitchy, man, in that short area, and it's just different, man. It's different from me from what I see from Maxwell, man. It's just and I speak to that to say, just because your top end speed is faster doesn't mean that short area speed is faster than some of these other guys, man. Like there's some guys who are quicker than they are fast, and I see a lot of quickness from some of these other guys, and I want that quickness because that's what football is about. And Steve, you said it a bazillion times on the channel, and I think you're dead on. That 10-yard is really what I'm looking for. Now, if you're running a 4.2, it matters. Let's not get that twisted at all. But that 10-yard is something that I'm really taking a look at, because football plays typically last 4 seconds or less. And it's a short burst of explosiveness that we're trying to get to and make plays, whether it's making tackles or whether it's making moves to go get that 10, 15, 20-yard chunk and let's go play the next down. So that 10-yard is indicative to me to what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing, like I said, when Nate Wiggins broke on a football, that's why I was so high on him last year, because it looked crazy when he got off and he broke on a play, or when somebody's hips dropped and he mirrored the hips and went and made a play on the football. So for those reasons, man, I think Maxwell is going to need a little bit of time to develop. He's going to get an opportunity somewhere else. That secondary isn't as deep on the outside as us, but I just can't see him playing nickel or anything else in the secondary. And Brad Holm is a guy that wants positional versatility out of his secondary, and really out of all of his football players. He's drafting linebackers that can also play fullback, and like it seems like everybody that this dude drafts, he wants D linemen that can play all over the D line, not just a one-trick ponies. That's kind of what Brad's been about the whole time that he's been a GM. I'm
just curious to see what Brad sees, because obviously you can only bring in 30 people for a top 30 visit. I don't buy into the playing chess. I think if he's got, if he wants to talk to 30 people, that's who he wants to talk to. And then also the pro day. So I think he's double dipping there, I think, for a reason. And there's probably some other guys that got top 30 visits. Maybe a Josiah Stewart. We'll have to look into that and see if he had a top 30. Did he? Off the top of my head, I can't think of it. He did. So that's another guy that's getting double
3 times.
So I mean,
3 times he's had.
So Josiah Stewart confirmed Detroit Lion officially, right?
I'm not going to say that, but it is interesting. That's another one that I was going to keep to the vest for later, but he's a guy who's had a top 30 with the Detroit Lions. He met at the combine, I believe, and then he's had a virtual visit as well. So they're obviously very interested in Josiah Stewart. But speaking to Maxwell is a local guy. So meaning, since he's a Michigan guy, we didn't have to use a top 30 visit on Maxwell. Your local visits don't count against your top 30 visits.
But I thought a top 30 visit, I thought you could do like a top 30 visit has, I don't know what I'm trying to ask. So I'll try to ask you off here, but I think you can do both though. So it's not like he brought him in for the local pro day. Like he brought him in for the top 30 visit and they get like some special privileges, whatnot. And then the local pro day is kind of like more workouts, whereas the top 30 visit is more interviews. That was my understanding. Am I wrong on that?
I can bring you into the facility and do whatever I want at the like interview you, whatever I want to do. If you're a local guy, it's supposed to be within 50 miles, or if you're from Michigan and he's from West Bloomfield, so they can bring him in and that doesn't count against their top 30. If I'm wrong, guys, put it in the chat, but I'm pretty strong on that understanding of
you're right about that. But I'm saying for the official top 30 visit, you can only bring in 30 NFL draft candidates, and that's when I think you can sit in a room and actually like ask questions at your facility, whereas the local pro day is more workout based, was my understanding. And again, if anyone has an answer, leave it in the comments, but that's what I always thought that was the difference, was sitting in a room talking, asking you football questions versus local pro day. Now you're here, you're doing some workouts, maybe some light Q&A, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I'll have to do some digging on that as well.
Yeah. And I don't even know what the ability would be, if you're at if you're going to a team's pro day or something like that, what the availability would be to talk to a guy as far as in a room or whatever. But I don't know what the rule is on that aspect of it. But I know that they do talk to these guys at these local pro days.
Yeah,
I've heard about interviews from local pro days, and they're like, I don't know where they took place or whatever, but just after people get drafted, you hear the stories of those guys sitting down and whatever. So
yeah, it's more hands-on because I remember like Mike Tomlin at the Alabama Pro Day was very, very hands-on with Jalen Milroe, like actually running drills with them. So I'm sure they have a sit-down, I don't know, little homework assignment for Stephen Will tonight, I guess. But you got anything else for tonight?
No, man, I'm excited, man. More draft talk. We got some stuff locked and loaded. I tried to keep some stuff in the pocket, man, even though Steve's trying to get me to pull some stuff out that he knows that I have sitting waiting. But yeah, man, we're getting closer and closer to this draft. Really, man, we're about 2 weeks away, and I can't wait.
Can't wait either. Stick around, hit that like button. We'll be back later with another show.
Peace.